welcome everyone to the Sage 50 Cloud Pastel Accounting webinar on company management. So guys, when we say company management, many people have multiple companies. If I go to my file open, you will notice that there are a number of companies here that I need to use. Now, obviously, company management to a lot of people just means adding and activating the companies. There's a lot more to company management than that, and it's something that in my 11 years at Sage, I've come to realize a lot of people either don't know that the tools exist or they're not sure when to use the tools. Now, the way that Sage 50 Cloud Pastel Accounting works is that if you go to your setup and you go to your periods, you see this year and you see last year. So when you are viewing reports, you can view for this year or last year. But let's say you actually opened this company in 2010. What happened to the last 10 years worth of information if I can only see this year and last year? And guys, the truth is all of that history still exists. And what happens is that your file just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, while Pastel is the interface program that you use, you have a database called Pervasive, and that is where all of the transactions are written to. Now, if you never clear out those transactions, those files just get bigger and bigger, and much like Access, on occasion, you will have corruption. So in order to ensure the health of your data, it's actually a good idea to delete history on occasion instead of just keeping that history there. It's not necessarily accessible to you. So there's not really a reason to have it. The reason that I'm running this webinar is because we're coming to year end and a lot of people are like, okay, well, when would I delete history? Why would I delete history? And how does that all work? So guys, I'm not saying that you need to delete the history every year. Not at all. You can do this every 3 years. If need be. It does depend on how many transactions are going through the system at a time. If you need to delete your history every year, you should probably be on Evolution then, because you're probably processing too much for Express or Partner to handle. But if you're not processing that much, it's small business, you're doing a couple of transactions, you're probably fine to only do that every 3 years. But there are things that you need to be aware of. Firstly, one of the main things with company management is ensuring that your data integrity check is done. And that this is done fairly regularly. Many people tell me that they only do this once a year at year end. Guys, that's quite concerning. This is actually to ensure that the information in your Pastel is correct. I would advise actually running this once a week. If you can't run it once a week, you should at the very least be running this once a month, because you want to make sure that no errors were detected, that you can be fairly sure that the financial information you are pulling is correct. There's nothing worse than suddenly at year end pulling this or running the data integrity and getting a whole host of errors that you now have to send in to be fixed. The question then is, were any of the reports correct? When did the corruption happen? Is the corruption recent? Has the corruption been around for the last 6 months? Now, I'm not saying that it means that your financial information will be wrong, but those are questions that are raised. So my advice is this should be run every week. Generally, I tell people we'll run it on a Friday afternoon before you close down, and you should be good. If you cannot do that because you are very busy, and I know some of you are in retail, so it isn't a Monday to Friday operation you're running, guys, find a time where you can run this. Even if someone has to come in early one day at 7 to actually run the data integrity. Also bearing in mind, most data integrities will not run as quickly as mine. So again, depending on the size of your data, depends on how long this will take to run. I have seen data integrity take 4 hours to run. So please bear that in mind with the advice I'm giving you. Mine takes a couple of seconds, but what you want to see is no errors detected. As long as there are no errors detected, guys, then you can also delete that history. So this is part of the health of your company data set. Why are we holding on? So for example, if this was a 2010 company, why am I holding on to all of that history if I've created new companies every year, and I can actually go back into the companies and view that history anyway. And the reason I say that is because of the most common way that people run year end. You create a new company called, you put the year at the end, and you run the year end in that company. So you probably have a number of the same company. For example, demo 10, demo 11, demo 12, demo 13. I can open any of those and view the history that I need. All that I need to know is that this year and last year are correct. They correspond according to my financials, and I need to make sure that my stock is accurate. And that is one of the biggest things when you are choosing to go to change, delete history, and clear files. The first thing is you cannot have any open batches, and guys, not even documents on hold. So this is something that you need to do when you are sure, okay, I've updated everything and I can run this. It does not need to only happen at year end. You can do this at any time when you feel comfortable. As I said, you also don't need to run this every year. You can do this every 3-4 years. Whenever you're like, hey, I think it's time to clear out my history. I don't need it anymore. I can't even view it. There are then two parts to this. There's the delete, consolidate transactions, and then there's the clear balance, remove files. Now, the delete consolidated is when you're going to delete history. The clear balances, remove files. This is a really neat tool to use if you, for example, want to create a copy company, or you have a company that's very similar to a company that you already have. Possibly it actually uses similar customers, a lot of the same customers, or a lot of the same suppliers, or just the inventory is the same. You can then come and create a copy company, and you can choose to clear the balances and remove the files. What this option will do is it will in fact clear out and make everything zero. So all the financial information in that copy company will disappear. So please don't do this in your data set, and please don't do it without a backup, because you can delete all of your financial information. If you don't have a backup, guys, there's nothing we can do to get it back for you. So please don't ever actually run this without making a backup. I'm in the demo, guys. I know I haven't done a backup, but I don't really mind if I lose information. I'm not running a set of books. So please, you never ever run this without a backup firstly. Here you will choose what you want to clear. So this is about clearing the actual transactions. And then here would be removing the master files. If you do not choose to clear the transactions, you cannot remove any of the master files. They only become available if you remove the financial information. Now, guys, that being said, as I said, this is if you're going to create a copy company, so a new company, and you don't want the hassle of exporting, importing, that type of thing. But this should only be used if you don't have corruption. So if you've got a set of data that's corrupted, and you're like, okay, I need to create a new company and take on balances, I'll just create a copy company and just, you know, clear the stuff. No, guys, you're copying the corruption across. So this is if you have a healthy company, and either you want to start the company over, or you have a company that's similar and you just want to copy some of the master files across and remove what you don't need. If we go back, what I was speaking about specifically was the delete, consolidate transactions. Again, you don't do this without a backup. Now, guys, this is where we're going to delete history. So we've got a healthy company. We're happy with it, but it's really old. I've got data in here from 2010, and I don't need that data. So I'm going to go next, and it's going to say, okay, well, what do you want to delete? So I'm going to go, well, I want you to delete 3 years ago plus. So I'm going to have this year and last year, but I'm not going to have any of the history after that, because I don't actually need it. That's all I can see in my reporting, and it's not going to change my financials at all. It's going to keep my financials as they are, but it's just going to remove, for example, the history headers, the history lines, the open item. All of the, it's going to clear the tables nicely for you, and it's basically like a defrag. So we're going to say next, and then it's going to ask you, do you want to delete your invoice history, your inventory history? Now, guys, sometimes people are like, okay, do I want to do this? Now, If you want to clear history, then yes, you want to remove that. It's very old. Chances are you aren't even looking at it anymore, even though you can print the 2010 documents. The chances are no one's asking about that invoice. If you haven't followed up on it in 2021, then you probably are never going to. You've probably written it off to bad debt already. So if you choose to do this and you are using Partner and you do have the serial number tracker add-on module, you would also then choose to delete the serial numbers. Please bear in mind that the serial number tracker doesn't allow you to use the same serial number twice. So if you remove this, it might allow you to reuse those serial numbers because it no longer knows that they've been used. Just something to keep in mind. But then we're going to say next. Now, guys, what it's going to tell you is it's going to advise you that if you remove the history, it is going to affect your inventory reporting. It's the only thing that it really affects, because your inventory quantities and your inventory history are no longer going to tie up. Now, the reason for this is your inventory quantities pull from something called your multi-store transaction file. Now, that file is totally intact, even if you remove history. But your inventory history pulls from your history lines. We are about to delete invoice history lines. So if you try to pull that inventory history, those lines don't exist. There might be a very big difference between your activity and your history because the lines have been removed. So guys, when you are doing this, you need to know that if you use inventory, you are going to need to do a stock take. It is that simple, because you want to make sure that those two reports correspond. The only way to do that is you're basically going to run a stock fix on the data when you're done deleting the history, and then you're going to do a stock take. And the reason for that is if you do the stock fix, what it does is it looks at your headers and your lines for your inventory, and it goes, oh, the multi-store transaction says this, but based on the history, it says this. So I'm going to make the multi-store transaction table the same as my history. We know we've just deleted history, so it's inaccurate. But the reports are now the same. So if you do a stock take, it's going to affect both reports correctly, and the figures and the average costing will then be correct. So if you are going to delete inventory history, you have to do a stock take if you use inventory, physical stock, or else your company is not going to make financial sense anymore. Your inventory is going to be wrong. The amount of or the value of your inventory is going to be wrong, and you're basically going to have incorrect reporting. So you have to do a stock take. Please take a note of that. So that's what this message means. It's not a yeah, I don't care. This is actually a very big deal. So we know what the implications are. We know what we need to do to correct it. So we're going to go, yes, we want to continue because I understand what's happening. It's then going to ask you about your open item transaction history. So it's going to say, hey, look, do you want to keep this stuff just so that you have it, or do you want to remove it? Now, guys, you can just remove it. Unlike the inventory, this doesn't have a great impact on anything. At this point, your customers should have already paid for that anyway. Like, you shouldn't need to be chasing customers 3 years on. If you are, you need to make the choice. Okay, has this been handed over, or have I written this off to bad debt? But this is entirely up to you. It's not going to change the amount your customers owe you. It's just going to remove the open item history. And so basically, your customer detail ledger pulls from the master file. Your statements pulls from the open item table, and your aging pulls from the open item table. So there might be a slight change in the aging if you do this. It's something you'll need to double check on. But generally, I find that at this point, most things should have actually been matched up and should be correct. Again, guys, you can then just convert balance forward back to open item, and that will correct everything if you need to. There's no stock take or anything that has to happen. But that is the only thing that it may cause. Obviously, here I am assuming that most of your customers have either paid you or you've written the stuff off to bad debt. Then here you can choose, am I deleting customers? Am I deleting suppliers? Am I deleting both? You can choose what you want to remove. Obviously, the more history you leave in place, the bigger your table, the more chance of corrupting it. Then you're going to say yes, and then it's going to ask you about deleting or consolidating detailed ledger transactions. Now, guys, again, here you have a choice. Much like you have a choice with deleting the inventory history and the open item history. As I said, if you're deleting the history, you might as well do it. But if you are worried, you can choose to leave that, and you can just choose to consolidate. What that means is that it's going to consolidate all of this information to a specific account. So it'll be there, but it's going to be in one account kind of thing, and it's going to be one transaction. So it's entirely up to you. You can choose not to. You can choose to actually delete it. And then if you've got Project Tracker, again, add-on module, whether you want to remove that, or you can choose to consolidate. And then you can choose what to consolidate. So if we choose to consolidate, it'll then move on to our receipting. And if we say next, it's going to ask you, okay, now choose what accounts. What are we consolidating? Are we consolidating everything? Is it a specific account you're consolidating, etc.? If you say next and you have open batches, it will give you that error. If we go back, however, and you choose to delete, again, guys, you can choose if you've got the receipting add-on module, are you removing that? I am in the demo, which means every module in Partner is available to me. And then again, it's pretty much the same. Okay, what? Is it specific history you want to remove? Is it all history? And guys, if you want to remove everything, basically your screen needs to look exactly as mine does now. From General Ledger 1 to 9999, from sub-account 1 to 999, from account blank to account Zs, from supplier account blank to supplier account Zs. This basically is saying everything in this company, I want all the history 3 years plus to be gone. If you want a range, you click on the magnifying glass and you select your range accordingly, guys. So again, it's entirely up to you. You're going to say next, and from here, guys, the very next screen goes process. And what you'll do is you'll say process, and it will remove all of that history, or it will consolidate all of that history depending on what you've chosen. But what this does is this gets rid of unnecessary history that you cannot access anyway. It minimizes the size of your table. It rebuilds all of those tables to make sure that the information is correct in them. And it just helps to ensure the health of your data set. So as I said, it's not something that you have to do every year, but it is something that I would advise that you do at least every 3 years. Just to remove that stuff, especially if you are creating a new company. If you are not creating a new company because you're on Express Startup, this still isn't a bad idea for you to actually just remove that history. You can't access it anyway. There is another way for you to have multiple companies, but they would only really be accessible to your accountants. So you can still make a backup and then rename it to, for example, Demo 11. It's just in Express Startup, guys, you can't open all of those companies unless the backup is the same name as the company that you have. Now, guys, that is something that I will cover in the year-end ones because it's very specific to year-end and how startup actually works, which is one user, one company, in spite of it saying two, the demo counts as one, just because people have argued that with me. So, guys, it is only one company because the demo always counts as a company. It does not mean that you get two companies, even if you delete the demo. That being said, guys, that is a part of company management. So we've got, you need to run data integrity and you need to run it more frequently than once a year. You need to look at removing history, but if you remove history, especially with inventory, you need to know you've got to do a stock take. It is imperative that you do that stock take. You will have to run something called a stock fix first. Then guys, the next part of company management is making sure that you're making effective backups. A lot of you are going, well, of course we make backups. Guys, I cannot tell you the number of people I've spoken to that I'm like, hey, do you have a backup? And they actually say no. In spite of it asking you, in spite of saying, guys, you need to make regular backups, they're like, yeah, no, I back up like once a week or once a month. Guys, that's not enough. This is your financial data. This is what you submit to SARS. It is imperative that you actually have backups, and you need to make backups regularly. I would say that you need to make backups at least once a day. Whether you are using the cloud backups, iEntry, or you are physically backing up yourself to an external drive, that is entirely on you. But you need to be making at least one full backup a day. If you're on iEntry, guys, that happens incrementally, it happens automatically, and it backs up. If anyone is running on 19 and you happen to have the 365 integration, that gives you access to the cloud backups. What that means is it's also automated. You set up the cloud backups and it backs it up for you. If you're doing it manually yourself, guys, a lot of people do it, but they do it directly to their C drive. They're like, no, I've got backups. Here they are, and they open their C drive. Guys, again, that's dangerous. It's great. I'm happy you're making backups. But if your computer crashes, those backups crash with it. So if you're not backing up to the cloud, if you're not backing up to iEntry, which are basically both off-site, it means you can access them even if your machine crashes. You need to be backing up to an external resource, be it a flash drive, be it an external drive, be it a CD or a DVD. You need to be putting those onto external drives, because if your computer crashes or if you get hit with a virus and you need your machine formatted, you need to know that you have your backups, not that they're sitting on a corrupted hard drive that you can't get to. So that is the next part of the health of your data set, is making sure that you have backups. Then guys, a small part, and this is something that a lot of people don't give a lot of thought to, a small part of company management is, one, where you keep your data. So where you keep your actual normal company folders, not your zipped folders, and how those folders are named. And the reason I'm going over this is because it's year end, and because the majority of people run the year end in the most inefficient way possible. And I don't want anyone to feel they scolded here or anything like that, guys. It's the way that I was taught to run year end, and over 11 years, I realized how incredibly inefficient it is and how time consuming it is. And so I take it on myself to actually show people a better way to run year end. It's not wrong, the most common way to run it, and it is how everyone has been taught, but there is a better way. And a lot of people don't think about how they name their companies. So guys, most of these are actually from customers, so it's data I've been working on to fix stuff. That is part of my job. I do test data, I do check where there are issues, I do try to resolve them, I give feedback. And you will notice that most of them have a number at the end. So this is what people are working on. They are working on, for example, NUT 21 or CC 2021. And that's what people work on. When they roll over, they're going to roll over to either 21 or 22. Depending on how you choose to do your years. Some people put the year that they're working in. So for example, we're in 2021, they'll put 21. Although it's not the financial year, that's what they do. Others put the financial year, which will be, for example, 20, 21, 22, whatever the financial year we're moving into is, in this case, 22. So when you roll over, you create a new company, you call it that, and you run the year end in that. Guys, the reason it's inefficient, and please, those of you who are single users, guys, you can totally ignore me right now, because for you, whether you create a new company and run the year end in that new company, or whether you don't, This makes no difference to you. This is specifically to multi-users, my customers who are 2 users and above. So I've had clients who are 15 users, and guys, the more users you are, the more inefficient this is. Because what you've got to remember is the moment you change from, for example, NUT 21 to NUT 22, you have to go to all 15 users, deactivate NUT 20 or NUT 21, and then activate NUT 22. That takes time. So when you are creating your companies, please think about the name, and guys, use one name, for example, demo. When you run the year end, the company that you're creating is going to be last year. You're going to run the year end in demo. You're always going to work in demo. You're never going to have to activate, deactivate, change passwords, because you will only ever work in one company. The create new company will be, hey, this is the company that's going to my auditor for to do my financials for this year and submit to SARS. So that is part of company management, looking at the names and running Pastel in the most efficient way possible. Again, guys, probably the first week of year-end webinars, this is stuff I'm going to go over, and I'll go more in depth and I will show you exactly what I mean, because I'm going to do a demo on just this topic to try to explain how it works, because I do know that it does seem confusing. It's like, where do you mean? How? Unfortunately, I need a company that I can roll over. I'm in the process of creating all of those companies, the ones that are broken and the ones that work perfectly well, because I need to be able to show people the different errors. So join me for those year ends, but knowing the names and the folder names of your companies are important, guys. 8 characters, alphanumeric or alphanumeric. No special characters. No weird things in there. If you do a manual unzip from a backup and it puts a date and time stamp, you're going to have to remove it. So for example, you take it away, guys. It having brackets, it having underscores, it's not going to work. It's going to give you a runtime error 5, but then also think of the actual name and how that's going to affect you when, for example, you run year end. When, for example, you actually look for that company, you need to know what your companies are called. You need to know how often you're going to have to change your passwords, all of that stuff. And all of this comes in with the naming. And unfortunately, yeah, it is mostly around year end, because every time you change the folder name, you have to change passwords, deactivate, activate in a multi-user environment. So guys, those are my main 4 tips around company management and company health. Run your data integrity often. Delete history, as I said, at least every 3 years, because you don't really need it, and it just prolongs the health of your data set without you having to create a new company, which I will go into shortly. Make sure that you are making regular backups, daily backups, and make sure that they are to external sources. And then pay attention to your company names. Obviously, guys, if you're happy with the way that you do your company names, if you're happy with actually creating a new company, you don't mind the extra step of activating, deactivating, changing passwords, that's totally fine. It's not incorrect. It's just inefficient. It's not the fastest way that you can run a year end, because there are a number of extra steps in a multi-user environment should you run it that way. Now, guys, all of that being said, that is to prolong the health of your data. There is one other thing, which is, when do you create a new company and take on balances? Because that is a reality, and that is something that happens, and that also goes hand in hand with company management. And guys, when you do that is when you start seeing that you are getting a lot of errors on a company data set. So if, for example, you run data integrity and you run some of the other checks, so you verify history files only. Now, guys, remember where I said if you use inventory history pulls from the history lines. If you're finding that often your inventory history is incorrect, you need to verify your history files only. And the reason for that is what you might find is that you actually have a number of missing lines. Now, if this is something that you've gotten hold of us about, we've tried to help you, we've looked into the root cause, and it keeps happening, but it's not happening on other data sets, it could mean that this data set is just really old. And unfortunately, files corrupt. That is a fact. We live in a country where we have an incredibly unstable power grid, guys. That is not a good thing when we're dealing with live data sets. And make no mistake, Pastel is a live data set. So often I'll get people going, yeah, but my Word doesn't do this and my Excel doesn't do this and stuff. Yeah, guys, your Word and your Excel aren't live data sets. Pastel is a live data set. That has a huge impact on that. So please don't misunderstand that because it doesn't happen on all programs, everything's fine and Pastel's the problem. Pastel is very unique in that you are running and writing to a live data set all the time, especially in a multi-user environment that is constantly connected to the server and traffic is running up and down the network all the time. In an unstable power grid, and that doesn't mean, oh, we lost power. Guys, that means power surges, power dips. The lights suddenly flicker. It's either gone through a power dip or it's gone through a power surge. The lights suddenly get a bit brighter. All of that can actually cause havoc with your network, which can cause havoc with communication between your machines. So if you are seeing that you're getting constant issues, you're constantly getting status 2s on different files, and this doesn't happen on other files, so we've ruled out that your network is a problem because there are networks that are unstable besides Eskom, and that needs to be addressed. So guys, please bear that in mind. There is such thing as network instability. If that's been ruled out and your network is fairly stable, given everything, then it's probably time to create a new company and take on balances. If that is the case, please don't create a copy company, delete the transactional history and keep the master files because you're copying that corruption across. It is safer then to create a new company, export the information, do a cleanup, import the information, and take on balances. So guys, that is basically company management, knowing when to do what. So guys, if anyone has any questions, please can you send those through to me now. If you need me to go back a couple of steps, if I was unclear somewhere, I confused you, please use the question icon. You can find that on the right-hand side of your screen. It should have a little question mark bubble on it, and it should have a number in there. So right-hand side, and you need to type your questions through to me. All of you are muted. I cannot hear you. You have to type through to me. I will then read the question and answer the question. Once I've answered all of the questions, I will type out my answers as well. So guys, please send that through to me now. I do hope that you found this informative. Thank you. Guys, if no one has any questions, you're welcome to leave. Please note I did record this session. So hopefully when you get that email tomorrow, it will put this recording to that email along with your attendance certificates. If it doesn't, guys, please can I ask that you just email me and let me know that I put the wrong video. It's something that I found recently, so I want to see if I have automated it correctly. Otherwise, guys, that is it for this session. If you're happy and you don't have any questions, you are welcome to leave. I will be back again with our general webinars, I think in the 2nd or 3rd week of April. It is on the exact same link that you used though. So guys, I look forward to that, and I do hope that you guys will attend my year-end webinars. Those will be run through the whole, well, the last week of Feb, the whole of March, and I think the 1st week of April. I'm running it every day, twice a day. And if you need to jump into multiple sessions, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much.